The final item of business today is a member's business debate on motion number 4776 in the name of Mark MacDonald on Grampian launches Autism Alert Card. This debate will be concluded without any questions being put. I would invite members who wish to speak in the debate to please press the request to speak buttons at this time. And Mr MacDonald, if you are ready, 7 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, Presiding Officer. Can I begin by thanking those members from across the parties in the Chamber who signed my motion, enabling it to be debated in the Chamber. Can I also thank the National Autistic Society Scotland, firstly for inviting me to the launch event for the Autism Alert Card, and also for the support that they provided in drafting of the motion and preparation for this evening's debate. I note, Presiding Officer, that following Alison McInnes's debate on Camphill Scotland yesterday and preceding Richard Baker's debate tomorrow lunchtime, we have a hat-trick of North East members' debates in Parliament today, and I hope that the high standard that was set by Alison McInnes's debate last night will continue in this debate and also tomorrow, and I have every confidence that it will. This is the Autism Alert Card, Presiding Officer, which Grampian launched on the 12th of November, 1 month ago today, and I believe it will make a key contribution to improved understanding of autism within the criminal justice system, but also has wider application across both the public and private sector. I think it demonstrates a strong commitment from the organisations who have signed up to it, which include Grampian Police, NHS Grampian, the 3 North East Councils, Autism Initiative Scotland, G4S, Grampian Autistic Society, and indeed the National Autistic Society itself. And I think the input of G4S, who handle prisoner transfer, I think is an important facet alongside that of Grampian Police. And I said at the launch event on the 12th of November, when I was offered the opportunity to speak at the event, that I hoped that other organisations, both public and private sector, would look at ways in which they could buy into the process and make use of the Autism Alert Card in order to help them and also those individuals with autism and Asperger's syndrome who may use their services or frequent their premises. The card has been launched to help ensure that those with a condition are quickly identified and supported by Grampian Police and a range of partner organisations as outlined previously, and National Autistic Society Scotland is heralding the card as a breakthrough for Grampian. There are an estimated 50,000 Scots with autism, and nearly 6,000 of those are thought to live in the Grampian region. The card will include details of a personal contact who can lead police and other organisations through the best ways to help the individual with autism through what can be a highly pressurised experience for them. And indeed, at the launch event, we heard from David Sylvester, a retired joiner from Murray, who has Asperger's syndrome. And he said, "On the outside, I appear articulate and look like I'm functioning well. This could be a real problem if I'm a victim of crime or accident, because police will expect me to communicate and process information in the same way they do, and I can't always do this." He went on to say, "It would be great if the public could see that people with autism are not weird or odd. We just see the world in a different way. We have support needs, but also capabilities. For example, I'm very observant and often spot the detail in a situation or conversation that many people might miss, so could be an excellent witness. But the police would need to know the best way to communicate with me. That's where the Autism Alert Card could be invaluable." And also attending that event was Sandy Fraser, who's 18 from New Deer and has Asperger's syndrome. And in the press release which was issued following the event, Sandy said, "I'm an observant driver, but if I come into contact with police, the flashing lights, crackling radio noises, high visibility vests and questioning could be confusing and overwhelming. I think the Autism Alert Card is going to really help police resolve these kinds of situations with less stress." And Karen Williams, Director of Corporate Services at Grampian Police, said that it will allow our officers to quickly identify a cardholder's condition, improve understanding of their needs and offer them the best possible support. And I think that's the crucial issue here, is about improving the understanding of autism, because while only a minority of people with autism come into contact with the criminal justice system, either as a victim, witness, suspect or offender, they are vulnerable due to their social and communication difficulties. Making an emergency 999 call, which many of us would take as a process for granted, can be very difficult for someone with autism, as can giving a statement to a police officer following a burglary. The wider implications of the situation may not be apparent to them. They also can have a difficulty in understanding subtleties of language. For example, they often interpret statements literally, so anyone who uses figures of speech or colloquialism or indeed sarcasm or humour often isn't relayed by the individual, and that can often lead to them displaying what could be considered as suspicious or difficult and challenging behaviour. The card contains enough basic information to allow a police officer or other member of the emergency services to recognise and support someone with autism through a range of situations. And alongside this, police forces are also supported to identify training for their staff to improve their knowledge of autism. Some areas have produced short films to demonstrate the alert card in use in a variety of situations, such as airport security, witness to a crime, or indeed a home fire safety check. And it should be noted that the Grampian Autism Alert Card stands alongside cards which have been issued in Strathclyde, Lothian and Borders and Highlands and Islands as well. Although there has been no formal evaluation of the schemes as yet, informally, National Autistic Society Scotland say that there is evidence from people that they are helpful and are helping. And users of the card have reported that it improves their self-confidence, knowing that they feel safer and more confident in public spaces. They also feel more confident when they come into contact with organisations. And police officers and others say they are helped to better support people with autism, and this has led to avoiding more serious situations developing and potentially avoiding more costly intervention, which is often not needed. Now, I think, Presiding Officer, one of the things we should note is that the recent case of Gary McKinnon, for example, I think has much to teach us in terms of societal attitudes and criminal justice attitudes toward autism and Asperger's syndrome. And I think there is still much that needs to be done to educate not just the public sector, but also wider society and indeed politicians around the difficulties that can be caused when people with autism and Asperger's come into contact with the criminal justice system or indeed with other services. And one of the things which I know that the National Autistic Society are quite keen on, and I certainly am quite keen on, is that as we move to a national police force, that this is an area where perhaps the government and the National Police Force might look to see if this is a scheme that could be replicated on a national basis, because certainly the anecdotal evidence that's being received is that it is of benefit, and I hope that's something the government will consider taking forward.
Excellent. Many thanks. I now call on Richard Baker to be followed by Dennis Robertson. 4 minutes or thereby, please.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Firstly, can I congratulate Mark MacDonald on securing this debate this evening. I know this is an issue in which he takes a particularly keen interest, and of course across the Chamber we all want to ensure steps are taken to support people with autism and their families. Since being elected, like members across the North East, I've met a number of parents with autistic children. I know how challenging their lives can be caring for them, even into their adult years. So everything we can do to help them and their families should be done. And I very much welcome the National Autistic Society taking the Alert Card initiative forward in Grampian. And over the years, there have been a number of debates on ensuring we have the support services we need for people with autism in Grampian. And Mark was, I think, said there's some 6,000 people with autism in Grampian, so there's a great need there. We had a debate over the future of St Andrew's School in Inverurie, where MSPs across the Chamber took an active interest. And there have been ongoing discussions over the level and range of support services available to people with autism with regard to issues like speech therapy and the constant need to provide more access to speech therapy and recruit more speech therapy professionals to Grampian. And while we were successful in a number of these campaigns, and indeed in securing a future for St Andrew's School, one of the challenges in these debates is that they are on what are undoubtedly resource-intensive issues. And while we will and indeed should continue to campaign and work for these improved services, we all know these are tough times financially. So it's very welcome today to discuss an initiative which is not simply about resources, but is a step which has been taken by a charity and supported by our local agencies, including Grampian Police and the other agencies to whom Mark MacDonald referred. I'm sure it will have taken a lot of work to put in place, but it does come across as a straightforward concept, but one which will make a real difference to people with autism, because we want them to take an active role in our communities, but of course social encounters which we might regard as routine can be anything but for them. So I hope the introduction of this card will give people with autism greater confidence in these situations, and indeed others, making them more aware of the fact of the issues regarding people with autism, the fact that they will find some of these encounters difficult to deal with, and give them more consideration on how to deal with these situations themselves. I'm sure it will be very broadly helpful in these situations, and it's very important we do all we can do to promote the use of this card. So whether it is dealing with the emergency services to which Mark MacDonald referred, and those particularly important situations, whether indeed it's going to the shops or making a purchase or getting on a bus, in all these situations I'm sure these cards will help the people with autism and everybody involved. And it will be important, and not just Grampian Police, but our councils and our other local agencies do all they can to promote the card and awareness of the scheme, to make sure that people know it's now being used so we can maximise its benefits. And so it's very welcome to hear that other agencies, along with Grampian Police, have signed up to this scheme. I agree this will make a positive difference to people with autism, that it's an excellent scheme which has been brought forward by the National Autistic Society on behalf of those they work so hard to support. So can I congratulate them on their initiative, and also Sir Mark MacDonald again on giving Parliament this opportunity to raise awareness of this project, to discuss it and to welcome it today.
Many thanks. Now call on Dennis Robertson, to be followed by Nanette Milne.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I too would like to congratulate my friend and colleague Mark MacDonald for bringing this very important debate to the Chamber this evening. I think Mark MacDonald did hit the nail on the head when he said it's about understanding, Presiding Officer. It's about understanding and awareness. Certainly in my social work days, I came into contact with many families with autism and Asperger's, and it's a very wide-ranging spectrum. And being aware was something that I had to become very quickly, because I hadn't been particularly aware of the impact and all the associated aspects of autism through the different spectrum. I wasn't aware that they had less sensitivity, perhaps, to heat or cold. Perhaps I wasn't aware that they maybe didn't make eye contact. I wasn't aware that they didn't realise sometimes the consequences of taking certain actions. It is a learning curve, Presiding Officer. And this is why it's essential that we have this alert card for our emergency services especially, and I think especially for our police, and again perhaps our emergency services in the health sector, where maybe people have to present themselves at accident and emergency. Because of the difficulty they have in processing certain aspects of communication, the alert card will ensure that the most appropriate member of staff can maybe engage with those that they're trying to communicate with. Presiding Officer, it can be devastating for the families of people with autism and Asperger's, especially for those that only want to give their young children the cuddle, the hug, and be the parent that wants to show their love through that demonstration. But quite often that's rebuked, it's rebuffed, because again the processing of the young child sometimes doesn't understand what is happening to them. Presiding Officer, Mark MacDonald, I think, in bringing this to the Chamber, has highlighted an aspect within our community of raising the profile of autism and Asperger's. He's mentioned 6,000 in Grampian. Not a number I would have considered to be a number if I had been asked to guess how many people with the condition is within Grampian. So it's many more than we know of, but perhaps it's because many people with autism and Asperger's live quite normal lives. And I think raising the awareness and understanding has to be through education. We need to ensure that our teachers are aware. We need to ensure that our GPs and people within our health sector are aware, but especially maybe those in the emergency services that I mentioned. But we need to ensure that the right information is given to the parents and carers of people who have children, and those children grow up to be young adults, to ensure that they understand the impact that autism and Asperger's has on their lives. Once again, I congratulate Mark MacDonald for bringing this very important debate to this chamber, and I wish him well in the future for raising the awareness within Grampian even further.
Many thanks. I now call on Annette Milne to be followed by Maureen Watt.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. Like others in the Chamber tonight, I too welcome this debate, and in so doing I pay tribute to Mark MacDonald's personal commitment to raising awareness of autism and to his excellent speech detailing the benefits of the new card to autistic people in Grampian. The focus of this evening is obviously the launch of Grampian's new initiative, the Autism Alert Card, but I would like to start by making a few general comments about what I believe to be the most challenging aspects of this serious condition. I believe progress has been made in recent years in tackling misconceptions about autism and changing public attitudes towards people who are affected by the condition. However, we need to go further and expose the ignorance and myths about autism and highlight the very real problems that are faced by people who have the condition, such as bullying at school and difficulty in obtaining full-time employment. I certainly will.
Mark MacDonald.
I wonder if the member is aware that the National Autistic Society frequently tweet autism myths and autism facts, which I then take the trouble to retweet. But that is good work being done by the charity to try and dispel some of the myths and explain some of the facts that exist about autism.
Thank you. Annette Milne.
As a non-tweeter myself, I was actually I'm very interested to hear that, and I think that sounds a very, very worthwhile initiative. It is estimated that there are around 50,000 people in Scotland with autism. That's 1 in every 100 people. And the incidence, as we've heard, is quite high in the North East, with around 600 people affected. And it is rising throughout Scotland as more people are recognised as having the disorder. So early diagnosis and therapeutic and educational interventions are needed to help people and their families and carers. So it's sad that there is still a lack of awareness amongst professionals and services are still patchy. But a number, as Mark MacDonald has just highlighted, a number of innovations have been developed recently to help people with autism. For instance, the New Transitions Project launched this autumn in the North East, which aims to support and prepare S3-4 pupils with autism as they move on from secondary education. I'm sure we'd all recognise that leaving school in itself can be difficult and traumatic for youngsters, but for young people with autism, that situation is exacerbated. And that's why this particular project, a joint venture between the Autistic Society Scotland and Inspire, a local charity working with people with learning disabilities, intends to offer specially designed modules to young people in Aberdeen and Aberdeenshire, which will focus on coping with anxiety and anger, enjoyment options, behavioural problems, and perhaps most significantly, developing social skills, which in itself is a real challenge for a young individual with autism. And I've no doubt that the Autism Alert Card will help people as they move from school to adult situations. Turning now to the card, for the Grampian area, I very much welcome the initiative, which has the potential to increase the safety of people with autism. This pioneering approach, described by NAS Scotland as a breakthrough for Grampian, strengthens the links between people with the condition and with Grampian Police, as well as other stakeholders. It gives, as has been said, details of a personal contact should an individual come into difficulty, such as becoming anxious on public transport or in a shop or during activities such as swimming or other sport. More importantly, it provides a massive degree of support for an individual with autism in that it helps the police to understand what could be perceived as erratic behaviour is actually because an individual has autism. That is a great step in achieving a better understanding and awareness of the condition. Finally, as I have said in previous debates, I would pay enormous tribute to NAS Scotland as a leading charity, not only in its field, but as one of the most vocal and active charities in Scotland. Presiding Officer, I commend the sterling work of National Autistic Society Scotland. And I commend the Autism Alert Card initiative and also the motion brought here tonight by Mark MacDonald. Thank you.
Many thanks. Now calling Maureen Watt, after which we'll move to the Minister.
Thank you very much, Presiding Officer, and can I add my congratulations to Mark MacDonald for bringing this motion to the Chamber this evening. People who have autism and autistic spectrum disorders may not be immediately obvious to people, and in fact it's a very underdiagnosed condition, precisely because it's a spectrum disorder. We know, for example, that Asperger's is a form of autism, and people with Asperger's are often of average or above average intelligence. They have fewer problems with speech, but they may have difficulty with understanding and processing language. And they have difficulties with social interaction, as Mark has mentioned. They may appear insensitive because they've not recognised how someone else is feeling, and they may appear to behave more strangely or inappropriately, precisely because they don't have the mechanisms that others have in terms of social interaction. And, has been mentioned, they can't process facial expressions or tone of voice or jokes or sarcasm that the rest of us take for granted. So even although not everyone who should maybe be armed with a card has it, it is important to raise the awareness of the card and the awareness of autism in general. Mark mentioned the criminal justice system, and as a former prison visiting committee member, it is something that too many people who are caught up in the criminal justice system may have autism. But even out with getting into prison or caught up in the system, even when there are boyhood pranks, it's often the person who with autism who's disarmingly honest, hasn't got into the habit of running away like the rest of his mates might have, so they do get caught up in the system. I think it's absolutely vital that security guards in shopping centres are made aware of the card and are trained to recognise autism, because I have a friend who is obsessed with watching out for shoplifters, and often security guards are a bit apprehensive of what he's doing. And I think transport providers are others who should be trained to recognise the card. It's good that it's working well in other areas. And I'd like to make the analogy with the Thistle Assistance Card, which I had the pleasure and privilege of launching for Sestrans in my role as convener of the Infrastructure and Capital Investment Committee. It was very well received, and it alerts transport providers to people who have sight, hearing, speech or mobility problems, and it's got special stickers that you can put on to say, please wait for me to sit down, or talk more slowly or clearly, or people with Parkinson's who may need more time at the checkout in shops and things. So I think these cards have a tremendous benefit, but it's important that training is provided to all those people who may come who may be presented with the card, and it's important that the holders of the card feel confident to present it in all times, so that we can break down more barriers and misconceptions or ignorance about autism. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Excellent. Now call the Minister, Shona Robeson, to close the debate on behalf of the Government, please. 7 minutes.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer, and I'd like to thank Mark MacDonald for bringing the launch of Grampian's new initiative, the Autism Alert Card, to our attention today, and I'd like to thank those members who have attended and contributed to the debate. As you might have noticed, I'm not Michael Matheson. I'm standing in for Michael as he's unable to attend this debate today, but this is a subject I'm very familiar with from my time as Minister for Public Health, and an area that actually is very dear to my heart as well. I fully welcome the launch last month of this card in Grampian, supported by Grampian Police, the National Autistic Society Scotland, a range of partner organisations across the region, and of course by Mark MacDonald and other local members. These partner organisations include the Autism Charities, Autism Initiative Scotland, the Grampian Autistic Society and G4S, Aberdeen City, Moray and Aberdeenshire Councils. This card, I believe, will help to ensure that people with autism are more quickly identified as being on the autistic spectrum and get the assistance and understanding they require. And members across the Chamber have laid out very clearly this evening why that's important, because it will help address the unique challenges that people with autism can face, particularly if they're victims of crime or an accident. In such situations, as has been said, they may experience immense pressure, become very anxious, but feel unable to explain their situation or what they are experiencing. In addition, among the difficulties they experience in the moment, they may have trouble interpreting facial expressions, may not understand what is being said to them, and may also misinterpret others' intentions. And all of these, of course, can have very serious consequences, particularly if a person is caught up in a serious crime or medical emergency. And those without an understanding of autism, which I think has already been said, there still is a challenge out there to help the wider public perhaps understand autism a bit more, but those without an understanding of autism may find such individuals' behaviour or words at such times unusual, which can be very difficult and stressful both for the person with autism and the person dealing with them. Public and emergency service professionals may find the person's behaviour particularly challenging in a high-pressure situation. The card will include details of a personal contact, that is a named representative of the individual on the spectrum who can then assist and support police, ambulance, hospital and other key service professionals by taking them through how best to help the individual and providing them with a fuller understanding of their needs. The Autism Alert card is not only for use in emergency or in high pressurised situations, it can also be used in daily life, as Maureen Watt talked about, when someone's out shopping, using public transport, using leisure facilities or indeed at social events. And by showing this card, the person can make the other person aware of their condition, improve their understanding and help facilitate communication. The National Autistic Society, which of course is one of Scotland's leading autism charities, is encouraging all young people and adults in the Grampian region to apply. An estimated 1 in 100 Scottish people are on the autistic spectrum, which equates to around 50,000 people, of which, as has already been said, 6,000 are believed to be living in the Grampian area. The Autism Alert card schemes have already been launched in Strathclyde, in central Scotland, Lothian and Borders and in the Highland and Islands regions, including the Orkney and Shetland Islands. These schemes have been launched by and are available through a variety of leading autism organisations, including Scottish Autism, the National Autistic Society Scotland and the Autism Resource Centre. I think Mark MacDonald made a very good point about the possible opportunities to take this further with the come into being of the single police force, and that's something I will pass on to Michael Matheson as an idea to take forward. This government is very committed to improving the lives of people with autism and their families and carers, and as many of you will be aware, in November 2011 Michael Matheson launched the Scottish Strategy for Autism to ensure that people with autism and their families are supported by the widest possible range of services, including social care, education, housing and employment, and I think that was widely welcomed. The government are beginning to make a real difference by improving support services available to people who need them. And 1 year on, we're making good progress, while acknowledging, of course, that there is always still more to be done. And alongside the strategy, the Minister announced an investment of £13.4 million of funding over 4 years to implement this 10-year strategy, building on improvements to autism services and access to these services, and part of that funding was the Autism Development Fund of £1.5 million per annum. available to local and national organisations to deliver local services on the ground. And to date, some 53 organisations across Scotland are benefiting from this. And other initiatives that are being funded to drive forward the work of meeting the strategy's recommendations to address gaps in services include the rollout of 6 new one-stop shops across the country, funding for training courses and investment in a 10-month national mapping project which will provide a picture of services on the ground and gaps needing addressed. In February this year, the rollout of one-stop shops was announced as a spending priority by the Minister for Public Health. And those one-stop shops provide local services for people with autism in Edinburgh and Glasgow, with 6 additional one-stop shops are being planned or in the early stages of being established in Grampian, the Highlands, Tayside, Fife, Lanarkshire and Ayrshire. These will be voluntary sector models working in partnership with local authorities, the NHS and local groups representing parents and those on the autistic spectrum, and each one will be tailored to meet local needs. These one-stop shops could provide a vehicle, perhaps, through which people could obtain information about and seek help in applying for an Autism Alert card. A variety of research projects are also being funded through the £13.4 million invested to deliver the strategy, including one addressing the issue of waiting times for obtaining a diagnosis. There are a wide variety of issues which people on the autism spectrum face in their daily lives, and no two people on the spectrum are the same, which has been an important point during this debate. For some, their differences may not be immediately obvious and they can be easily misunderstood. This work being undertaken, and these are just a few examples, will help us to realise our vision that individuals on the spectrum are respected, accepted and valued by their communities and have confidence in services that treat them fairly so that they're able to have meaningful and satisfying lives. And with that, Deputy Presiding Officer, I'd just again like to thank everyone for their contributions, and I'll make sure Michael Matheson is made aware of some of the points made during the debate. Thank you.
Many thanks. I now close this meeting of Parliament.